Who understood everything in that first 19 verses of Ezekiel chapter 40? No one. That's why we read 2 readings tonight, because it's very difficult when you read these things. Cubits, reeds, all these different sizes. How do you make something out of this? And so we've read 2 readings tonight, so hopefully you got something out of Psalm 15. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And when we get to Ezekiel 40, we're going to try and take the paralysis out of the analysis, if you like that term, and try and make it simple for you to understand just one little aspect of the temple, which will hopefully make this alive for you in the next 4 studies. So the real question is, who is going to dwell in that holy hill? Psalm 15. Who is going to be there, brothers and sisters? How many of us are going to be there? Have you thought about it today? Have you talked about it with your family, with your kids? Who is seeking first the kingdom of God in their life? Are you? Am I? You know, brothers and sisters, I reckon this is one of the most important studies you could do in the last days. Something that can lift your mind out of the mundane of this present life. All the trials that will beset us from day to day, this can actually lift us up and help us to think far more positive in life. Nothing more better that can help you to combat those in your life and put our minds on a different plane. There couldn't be a better study to give you a vision of the future. And we know these quotes, don't we? Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And look at the connection that it has with Revelation chapter 16. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth, same word vision, and keepeth his garments. Same word keepeth of Proverbs 29. Lest he walk naked and they see his shame, or cast off restraint, as the word means. And nakedness is a symbol of sin, brothers and sisters. If you have no vision, you've cast off all restraint, and you won't be there. And we need to develop a vision, brothers and sisters, and look forward to the kingdom just as much as all these other people did biblically. Look at Abraham. He looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker was God. Why? Because he travelled from place to place. He had nowhere. He lived in tents, but he looked forward to a day when there was a stable, firm foundation, when that temple would be established. Daniel over in Babylon, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? Well, Zechariah asked the same thing, how long? And also Jesus Christ himself looked forward to the day when this house should be a house of prayer for all nations. You know, everybody looked at it from a different way. Abraham from a foundations point of view. Daniel from a how long. Zechariah from all the difficulties that are happening to his people. Jesus Christ saw it as a house of prayer. And however we see it, brothers and sisters, biblically of course, we can't dream up and make fairy tale stories out of it. Whatever we make out of it, whatever reaches to us in our hearts and minds from the Word of God, take that deep, brothers and sisters. If it's like Abraham, if it's like Daniel, if it's like Christ, imagine yourself there in that day. And so what we hope to do is create a 2020 vision of the kingdom for you. Pilots need to have a 2020 vision. That means good short vision and good long vision. And you don't get into a plane with a pilot who can't see. He needs to be able to see what he's doing. Even though he's got all these instruments and everything's all navigated and done for him, he needs to have 2020 vision. Brothers and sisters, we're reaching for the skies, for the kingdom. We sit in the heavenlies in Christ Jesus. Let's make ourselves have a 2020 vision, brothers and sisters. Short term, what's happening now with my life, my family, my trials, my workplace, what things are happening in my life. But also long term, and where I'm going to be in the future in the kingdom age. Let's have clarity, brothers and sisters, and a clear focus. So Psalm 15, just turn to Psalm 15 for a moment. Just said this marvellous question right at the start, similar to Psalm 24. It says, Yahweh, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? The word abide there in that first phrase just means to sojourn temporarily in the tent, because it's the word tabernacle. But then he moves to the second part of that sentence, the next phrase, but who shall dwell in thy holy hill? And the word dwell there means to permanently abide, obviously in the kingdom. So you've got 2 halves or 2 phrases to that sentence. Who's going to abide in the tabernacle, which was Solomon's temple in his day? Sorry, not Solomon's temple, it was the tabernacle in his day. Well, who shall dwell in the kingdom in the future? Who shall have a permanent abiding place? In the next few verses, he actually gives you, I've always tried to make it out as 10, but I reckon there's actually 11 aspects there. Go through it in your own space and see what you work out. I love 10. 10's a nice round number. But I reckon there's 11 there. And 11 fits perfectly, brothers and sisters, because there's 5 positives, which is grace, and there's 6 negatives, which is the flesh. There are 5 positives that we must attain to and do. There's 6 negatives that we shouldn't do. 6 is flesh. And it's a list of all those things that the flesh would like to do but shouldn't do. And there are the positives that are imperative to do. That which Yahweh wants us to do, but also those 6 things which Yahweh hates. And it's those 5 positive things which I think are summed up in the very first 3 aspects in verse 2, where it says, "He that walketh uprightly, worketh righteousness, and speaketh the truth in his heart." Now, this encompasses every aspect of life, those 3 things. Walking uprightly is your integrity in life. I mean, brethren, are you honest to your boss? Have you ever walked out of your workplace and stolen something? We've probably all walked into a bank and they said, "Here's a pen, sign your name." We walk out with the pen. But we've stolen something. But that's just on a small level, isn't it? But walking uprightly is our whole aspect in life and integrity in the things that we do. Working righteousness. So it's the positive things that we do, not just the things we don't do. And also speaking the truth in our heart. Now, it always puzzled me for a long time. Why does it say speaking, which is an outward thing, which I'm doing right now, in your heart, which is an inward thing? Well, I think the point it's trying to say is the things that you speak outwardly start first here in the heart. It must be in the heart. You speak from the heart those things which you love and treasure. Matthew chapter 6. Maybe a good way to think about that is, when's the last time, brothers and sisters, you actually said to a friend, maybe the person sitting next to you, "I can't wait for the kingdom"? When's the last time you said that? When's the last time you said to something of that nature to a brother or sister in this meeting or to a friend or another collegiate, "You know, I can't wait for the kingdom. Donald Trump's gone nuts. Vladimir Putin's doing this and this. Everything's going to happen. I can't wait for the kingdom." That's speaking the truth from your heart, because it's in here. You know, but when we get to Ezekiel's temple and we read all those cubits and all those measures, we can sort of get lost in all that. Yeah, it's great. Yes, Rick, it's great to have a vision, and I really want to have a vision. I want it made a bit more clearer, and hopefully we can do that for you. But I get stuck in all those measurements. And hopefully tonight we can take the paralysis out of the analysis and get excited. I've done this a few times myself before, brothers and sisters, and I've had to restudy it again just for these classes. And it still gives me goosebumps on the back of my neck every time I look at this subject. And you're sitting there and you're studying, and you're walking around with Ezekiel, and you're literally measuring it out in your own mind as you're walking around. And it's exciting, brothers and sisters. You're there, you're with Ezekiel. Ezekiel walked about 30 kilometres in vision. As he walked this way, this way, east, north, west and south, round the circular part, back out again, everywhere that he went, 30 kilometres. And you're there with Ezekiel excited. And I've never experienced a study of this nature that has excited me so much. Why? Because it creates a picture in your mind. Imagine the joy of seeing Daniel. Imagine the joy of seeing Zechariah, Abraham, seeing Christ. Seeing people in the Bible that never had a name, but they're in the kingdom. You imagine that, brothers and sisters. You imagine you're 900 years into the 1,000 years. There's still only 100 years left to go. And whatever job that you might have throughout the kingdom age, whether it's priestly work or communal work outside, and you bump into another saint. And you haven't seen this saint for 900 years. And he lived in the Middle Ages and was faithful to the end. And you say, "Where have you been the last 900 years? And you've got another friend and you haven't seen that person for that long." These are the things that we need to conjure up and be excited about, brothers and sisters. It's not just our partners or our children or our great friends here, but it's thousands, if not millions of people from all ages we're going to spend eternity with. So why would we study Ezekiel's temple? Just turn with me to Ezekiel chapter 40 now. Why do we do it? Well, I reckon it actually gives us the answer for us. Because it is a vision of the kingdom. To Ezekiel it was real. And in verse 2 of Ezekiel chapter 40 it says, "In the visions of God brought he me into the land of Israel." See, this is more than just about a temple and sizes. It's about you and I being there. It's the visions of mighty ones. Who are the mighty ones of the future age? It's you and me. We're the mighty ones of the kingdom age, brothers and sisters. In fact, the word visions there is the Hebrew word mara, which means a mirror. And it's from the root word handsome or beautiful. It's not what I see when I look in the mirror every morning when I brush my hair, but the vision that he had was beautiful, it was handsome. And he saw a mirror image likeness of the kingdom. To Ezekiel, it was real. And even though it was a vision in his mind, as the angel spoke to him, it was real. That's why we need to study it, brothers and sisters. And that's what he saw. We've seen that picture many times before. Well, hopefully as we elaborate it, we're going to see a lot more, brothers and sisters, and be really impressed with this place. He was there. He walked around it. He walked 30 kilometres around this place. Full operation, as we're going to see by our last study. Brothers and sisters there, priests doing their work, people walking up and down stairwells, and all those things. And so the purpose for us is to see it ourselves and see ourselves there. Create our own personal vision of what we might be doing in that place. To appreciate its magnificence and how large it is. And appreciate our work in that place. We just need to do a bit of technical analysis in the meantime to appreciate it. It's also so that we might share it with others. Look in verse 4. He said unto me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes, hear with thine ears, and set thine heart upon all that I shall show thee. Why? To the intent that I might show them unto thee, thou art brought hither. Fair enough. But look at the next phrase. Declare all that thou seest to the house of Israel. So it's about sharing it with others, brothers and sisters. These 4 nights and making this vision is not just so I can take it in personally and think, oh, that's fantastic, it's wonderful. It's about sharing it with your husband or your wife, with your mother or your father, with your children. And Ezekiel had to go out on all the realms of Babylon, tell all the Israelites this is what is going to be built in the future. Not Ezra's temple, but a whole different topography, a whole different landscape, and a whole different temple. So the reason we should study is that we can tell others as well, and we can show our excitement for it. But not only that, come with me to chapter 43 and verse 10. There's another reason why you'd study this subject. Because after he's walked all around the temple and measured all these things, and he's walked those 30 kilometres in vision, and he's seen the glory return in chapter 43, the earlier verses, you get to verse 10 and he says, Thou son of man, show the house to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. Brothers and sisters, I reckon the first time that we approach this temple in all its glory, it will truly make us appreciate just how God's mercy was so great to us and how thankful we should be. Gratitude is one of those words, brothers and sisters, that we don't put enough depth into. Gratitude today, being thankful for what we have. And the first time we approach this temple, we're going to have the absolute most gratitude that God gave us that mercy when we did not deserve it. No man could have afforded the salvation that Jesus Christ did. We cannot live life without sinning. And so the Israelites would be ashamed of their iniquities when they see this place. And it would help them to measure the pattern. Well, not the pattern of the building, but the pattern of their own lives. And for us, that pattern is Jesus Christ. That's Hebrews, isn't it? The sum, the pattern is Christ. And when we look into that mirror, brothers and sisters, we should not see a reflection of ourselves, but a reflection of Jesus Christ. Here's the pattern. Here's the one we're moulding ourselves on. What do you see? And what do I see? And finally, we all know this quote, don't we? It should help us to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, which is the rest of that quote. And to inquire that one thing that we should all desire. One thing. There's one thing that really matters, brothers and sisters, and that's God's kingdom and his righteousness. And hopefully over the course of these 4 studies, we can help you with that, to help seek first the kingdom. As we get into it, I'd just like to acknowledge the one brother who actually did all this work on Ezekiel's temple and wrote this book. It's in my bag over here, excuse me. Everybody's probably seen this. There's a couple of different versions of it. This is the new version that's been reprinted. The older version is a hardback cover, done by a brother called Henry Sulley. What you're going to hear is exactly what Henry Sulley has come up with in that book. Having said that, there's 3 areas in there which I find really difficult, but you're going to get the Henry Sulley view anyway. Henry Sulley took 10 years to study this before he actually put it out and published it. 10 years. So he put a lot of work into this. In fact, we'll just read these things, some of Henry Sulley's comments, and it's quite fascinating to read it. This is what he said about it. The chief difficulty, however, is not the translation. We've got black words and white paper. That's hard, but it's not the translation, but the absence of any plan to explain the descriptions. Now, architects and other trained experts find difficulty in understanding even a comprehensive description of any building with a plan, but try doing it without a plan. So we did an extension to our house about 17 years ago, and the paper's getting a bit brown now, but I can open it up and I can look at this plan and think, yeah, that was the extension. An architect from this ecclesia, I think he's in Queensland now, did this for us, and he drew it up, and excellent. There's all little notes pointing to different things with all writing on it. And we can understand that because there's a picture there. You don't have that picture here in Ezekiel 40 to 48. You do not have a plan. God didn't actually fold out a plan and put it into the Hebrew manuscript with pictures on it. It didn't happen. So Henry Sulley took 10 years before he could come up with this idea because there was no plans. And how do you work these things out? So what he said is that the plans before the reader of this book are the result of a strict and scientific examination of the vision itself. They are totally different from anything present in the mind of the writer before he began the study. I don't know if you've got any other translations in your home, but I've got an NIV study Bible. Open up to Ezekiel chapter 40. It's got this fantastic picture that looks like Solomon's temple. It's got all the dimensions on there, and it looks like it fits perfectly. Henry Sulley had the same idea when he studied this. He said, surely it must look something like Solomon's temple. That was his preconceived idea up here. Started to piece it all together. Then he thought, hang on, something does not work here. Especially when you got to the circular part of the temple. There's no north, south, east and west. There's no weird measurements or straight measurements. There's weird doorways that it was one side is different to the other side. And eventually he screwed it all up. He threw it into the bin and he started again. And this is what we have. And when you look at his criteria, it is sensational, brothers and sisters. Patient investigation and careful construction. Analysis first and synthesis putting together afterwards. Not to jump to conclusions. Every passage had to be examined, criticised and put to the test. You have to get the correct understanding of the original words first and then search for any variety of technical meaning which might underlie the original. That's pretty good, isn't it? Now, imagine if we applied that to our Bible study. So his solution was reached by getting indisputable facts. There's indisputable things that which you can't argue, and you write them down. It's also by attaining correct understanding of the different elements. Okay, there's this section, there's this section, there's this section, and this section. Then you can put them together. And I think that's marvellous, brothers and sisters. And here's a good lesson for especially our young brethren. Here's a lesson in Bible study. If Henry Sulley went through 10 years to get this, just 9 chapters of our Bible, young brethren, the future of our religion, never tell God what you think the answer is. Let God tell you. Never apply what you think into Bible passages. Let the Bible tell you. Scripture and Scripture. You know, these things, young people, brothers and sisters as well, it is hard work. It takes hours and hours. You know, you just don't find it on the computer and you just, whoop, there it is. It takes hard work of reading, notebook by your side, taking notes and writing things down. Read and reread the Bible consistently in order to get the right facts and lessons. And that's a lesson, brothers and sisters. I had a brother recently said to me, I was taught something at work the other day. It was the 5 this. And I thought, I wonder if I could fit that into the Bible. And he did, he fitted it into the Bible. That's not how it works. You don't get something out there, some airy-fairy idea and see if it fits in the Bible. That's not how it works. You read the Bible first and God will tell you what the answers are. And so Henry Sulley came up with this idea, and that's our bird's eye view picture. Still might be, think, okay, it's great, I've seen that picture before, Rick, but I really can't see anything tangible just yet. Well, let's just make it tangible for you and just give you a little teaser. What's that a picture of? Cumberland Hall. Okay, so it's an area view, Google Maps, fantastic program. I used an easy Google Maps program for that. So you can see your hall there and the surrounding neighbourhood there. That's the size of the altar on top of Mount Zion. Hopefully that just makes it a little bit more tangible for you as we get into this study. Makes it amazing, doesn't it? Okay, let's dig deeper. Let's go back to chapter 40. In chapter 40, verse 1, we saw that Ezekiel had the vision on a particular day. A lot of work has gone into this particular day. He told us the exact day in which he was given this vision. And it's argued quite well that it was exactly 50 years from the Passover of Josiah. So therefore we could say that the temple will be maybe opened on a Jubilee year. And that's fine to say that. But what really is exciting for me with this verse is when you get 3/4 of the way through the verse, it says, "In the self same day, the hand of Yahweh was upon me and brought me hither." The self same. Why? Why do we need to be told it was the self same day? Well, if you go back to Ezekiel, and just put a note there, Ezekiel 24 and verse 2, that same expression is used in Ezekiel 24 and verse 2 when he is told that the king of Babylon is going to come against Jerusalem. And he did that self same day. Ezekiel 24 and verse 2. And so what Ezekiel is being told here is on the self same day, he saw the kingdom. He is actually transported to the self same day that the temple would be opened. Because the self same day, he was told that the king of Babylon would come, and he did. This date, the self same day, he was transported into the kingdom. And of course that's reminiscent of Revelation 1 and verse 10, isn't it? John was taken up in spirit on the Lord's day. He too was transported to the Lord's day, like John. He saw the temple in operation. He saw the glory return. He went around and walked all these kilometres in vision. And what did he see? He saw the visions of Elohim in verse 2, which we talked about earlier. It says there in verse 2, "And the visions of Elohim brought he me into the land of Israel and set me upon a very high mountain." That word set there means to rest. And it's a word used of attaining the rest. Hebrews chapter 4. So here's Ezekiel on the self-same day when the kingdom starts at rest. Hebrews 4, resting from his labours. Where is he? He's in Babylon. He's been taken captive by the Babylonians. But he's at rest in the kingdom age. And who are those mighty ones of verse 2 but us? And what are we at rest from, brothers and sisters? From the toil, from the mundane of today, from the trials that we face, from the angst and from all those things which happen day by day. And here we are at rest with Ezekiel in this vision. We're there, brothers and sisters. Now, where was he? Not just the self-same day, but this is very particular. It says that he was set upon a very high mountain by which was the frame of a city on the south. The word upon there actually means towards or near. So he actually wasn't on a mountain, he was looking at a mountain. And so this next picture here is probably what he saw. He was looking at a mountain where Zion was. And he saw the frame of a city. Now you imagine for Ezekiel, he's been in Babylon. Well, actually he started off in Israel. He saw what happened there. He saw the Babylonians come, and then he was taken off into captivity. In vision, he's taken back to the land again. He's never seen the land look like this before. It's different. All the hills and valleys that he knew before that were in Jerusalem and how Jerusalem was set up are gone. It's set up completely differently. And this picture maybe encapsulates what he saw as he looked up and, what's that doing there? And there's this frame of a city. It looks like a city on a hill over there. Incredible for Ezekiel who's seen that. And perhaps he's thinking in his mind, Psalm 48, beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth. The word situation means elevation, Psalm 48 and verse 2. Beautiful for elevation, the city the joy of the whole earth. And Ezekiel looks at this and he's bewildered as he's looking at this frame of the city in the distance. I've never seen Jerusalem look like this before. It says that he saw the frame of a city on the south. There's a lot of conjecture as to exactly where he was. I've actually got some Bible marking notes down here, which some can have afterwards, where I've got Ezekiel on the south, looking north. The more I look at it, I think he's actually north, looking south. But we can talk about that afterwards. It's not really that relevant. But if he's north, looking south, that fits in perfectly with Psalm 48 and verse 2, which says, "Beautiful for elevation, the joy of the whole earth is a city on the sides of the north." Which means if Ezekiel's on the north, he can see the north part of the temple. That's what I think the vision is. Fits in with Psalm 48 and verse 2. He's on the north, looking at the northern hemisphere of the temple. Doesn't matter if you think he's on the south, looking northwards. It doesn't matter. But it is pointed out there that wherever he is, he's looking south, and he's on that part of the temple. Now, just to get some things right here. Everybody's seen a picture like this before, just a standard top view, I suppose you'd call it. Yeah, okay. Just to get some things right, because as we talk about different things, I don't want you to get lost in what we're saying. So we just need to get some terms right, or some definitions. When we talk about the outer court is that square part of the building, which includes an outer section and an inner section. Okay, so there's an outer and an inner of the outer court. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So an outer and inner of that outer court with a beautiful pavement area in the middle. A great place for fraternisation. When we talk about the inner court, and that's a biblical term, the inner court, we're actually talking about the temple. That word temple is used exclusively in chapter 41 for the circular part of the temple. Now, my line is a bit big there, but that actually seems to stop just before you get to the porchway on the inside, and that becomes the most holy place in there. No mortal person can walk past there because the table of Yahweh is there. It's very difficult to understand the table of Yahweh, but it seems to fit in perfectly that it is some rotary thing that works around there, offerings are placed on there, and it rotates around. And no mortal person can walk past there. How does it rotate? Conveyor belts, water, whatever, I don't know. But we're not told. But it is a fascinating concept. But nonetheless, when we talk about outer court, we're talking about the square part of the building. The inner court is the temple itself. And the most holy is where only immortal brothers and sisters, priests can be. There's another little term called the separate place that belongs in there. And possibly it's this separate place, brothers and sisters, where Zechariah says that children will play in the streets of Jerusalem. Zechariah 8, verse 4 and 5. So hopefully we got those terms right there. And I imagine in that separate place, it's not just pavement and bland looking. I imagine to be little creeks and little bridges, secluded spots, tables, chairs for sitting down and talking, pathways for people to walk through because people have to walk from one side to the other side. There's going to be a lot of activity in this place. Time for fraternisation, singing, meditation, all those things, and for children to play in. So when we get to verse 3, it says, He brought me hither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass. And he had a line of flax in his hand and a measuring reed, and he stood in the gate. So here's Ezekiel in vision. He's got an angel next to him, and he's brought him to this frame of a city. And as he gets closer, there's another angel. There's another angel standing in the gate. And the gate is enormous. It's huge. And he's reflected on what the Ishtar Gate looked like back in Babylon. You can see this gate, and there's this small little figure standing in the gate. And it says it. And he stood in the gate. And Ezekiel is standing at the front of this frame of the city, and it's a small glimpse of how he is feeling. He's dumbfounded. There's a man standing there in the gate. What's he doing? Why has he got these two things in his hands? He's never seen anything like this before. And all of a sudden, the man in the gate talks to him. Verse 4, and the man said unto me, Son of man, behold with thine eyes and with thine ears and with thy heart. He's talking to him as well. And what he's really saying to Ezekiel is, when he says, behold with thine eyes first, that tells you exactly what Ezekiel's eyes are looking like. Big. Because he'd never seen anything like this before. Behold with thine eyes, yes, I can see it. And Ezekiel's looking at this, and he's never seen anything like this before. Behold with thine eyes, yes, I can see it, he says to the angel. And with thine ears, listen to what I've got to tell you, but make sure it's in your heart. Now, it's one thing to understand things technically, brothers and sisters, but what's it like deep down in here, in your heart? That's what motivates you, brothers and sisters. You can understand the truth, you can understand the promises perfectly, you can understand all the technical aspects of the atonement, but if it's not in here, brothers and sisters, it means nothing. It's got to be in there. Behold with thine eyes, because his eyes are open. Listen with thine ears as I tell you these things, and make sure it's in your heart. What a lesson for us, brothers and sisters and young people. So here's our man here that's holding these things in his hand. He's got a line of flax in one hand and a measuring reed in the other hand. You think, why is he holding these two things? Well, one is the measuring reed which he's going to measure with, and he uses that all the time. The other one is a line of flax, this neatly, tightly knit cord. He only uses once, and he uses that once a bit later on in Ezekiel. So what's this measuring man all about? This is not the angel that is with him. This is another man altogether. The word man there is the Hebrew word ish, which means a mighty man. So perfect, isn't it? A mighty man. It's Jesus Christ, who Zechariah 6 and verse 12 to 13 says, he will build the temple. So in that 50-year period from Christ's return up until the temple is inaugurated, Jesus Christ is actually going to organise people in different groups to work in different areas to make sure this is built. Huge enterprise, but he is the builder. It's like in my company, I might make all the components, but my boss is the one who actually really made them because he owns the company. And he organised it. So Jesus Christ organised these things, and he is the builder. And actually, here's an interesting thought for you. Jesus Christ knew his Bible quite well. We all know that. The amount of quotes that he quoted from the Old Testament, even just before he was about to die, is incredible. When he read Ezekiel 40 to 48 with all these cubits and reeds, how do you reckon he understood Ezekiel's temple to look like? You ever thought of that? Would that be interesting to know? He would have understood it perfectly. And here's Henry Sulley, took 10 years of effort to try and work this out. Bang, I reckon Jesus Christ would have got it straight away. It's just fascinating to know. He's a builder, and he would have understood these things. My Father's house should be a house of prayer for all nations. And as he had that perfect vision in his mind, as he read these things, for him, he looked forward to that day when it was a house of prayer and everybody would be praying instead of the wash-up that he got from the scribes and Pharisees in his day. Is in brass. Why? Well, because it's more copper, but it represents human nature, perfected by trial. And we know Christ was of Adam's race. We know all those quotes. But the line of flax is an interesting one. And it's only used once for a longer measurement in Ezekiel chapter 47 when he measures the waters. And it's a cord finely spun together. It is a woven cord with many different strands, showing that together it makes a tightly knit community of people. So it actually represents the saints. Where are they? In his hand. He's just judged them. And he said, well done, thou good and faithful servants. Enter into the kingdom which has been prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And they're in his hand. And so that line of flax, which he does use once, is representative of Jesus Christ at one with the ecclesia. And we know from Ephesians chapter 5, Jesus Christ loved the ecclesia and gave himself for it. And we should never forsake the assembling of ourselves together because Christ loved the ecclesia and gave himself for it. And we were wrought together into one unbreakable government in the hand of this mighty man. And of course we got that measuring reed as well. Now, has anybody ever seen Uncle John get out the measuring reed and measure any things? You've seen that? Yeah, I'm going to do that as well. Is that all right with everyone? Everybody loves Uncle John doing it. I've seen Uncle John do it at a Rathmines Bible School. It's fantastic. It's the best experience of my life, walking up and down the Rathmines Hall, measuring things out. And we had a fun time. Sorry, Uncle John, I'm going to mention you a few more times yet tonight. So I've got my own measuring reed. I did this for an ecclesia some time ago. And I was actually using pieces of conduit, which my father-in-law, electrician, cut up for me. And we had little connectors to connect it all. And he'd push it all together and he'd be measuring something, it'd all fall apart all the time. So this one ecclesia felt so sorry for me, they gave me one of these. And it's exactly like Uncle John's. So it's a tent pole, which you can move out, you can actually click it together and it never falls apart. It's fantastic. Now, before we even pull it apart, so one cubit is what size? Don't look. Does anybody know? About 18 inches. Now, okay, that's good. Now, if you go, 18 inches is the normal cubit. This one is the royal cubit, because notice it says in verse 5, it is by the cubit and in hand breadth. Now, I reckon the chairman and I probably have got about the same sort of measurements. We're about the same height, so we probably got the same measurement. So 18 inches would be about there. Add this one on, what do you get then? About 21 inches. Henry Sulley thought about 24 inches. He always had to make that a little bit bigger, you know. So what I've got here, with the hand breadth, that is perfect, okay? So we've actually got the perfect measurement here. Uncle John actually said that maybe that measure was Christ's measure. So you just don't know. Because I think the cubit in the day was always measured off the king of the day, wasn't it? So if it's a tall king, you had a bigger measurement. If it's a small king, a smaller measurement. If it's the measurement of Christ, well, it's going to be what it is. And Henry Sulley thought 24 inches, or 12 feet, or for those of us who love metric, 3.6 metres. So if I put all these out, it's 3.6 metres, which we'll do in a second. So the first feature that he measured is a wall. See that little man up there? See how he's measuring a wall? Can everybody see that man? Okay. That wall is mentioned in verse 5. And he says, behold, a wall on the outside of the house round about. Okay, so let's put this together. This wall was 6 cubits. So it's... See if I can do this without breaking it. Uncle John, you never had a problem doing this, have you? Look at this. I love this. Now, we've got fans up here as well. Okay, so I'm the man, at the moment, I'm the man of brass, and I'm holding a reed. It is 6 cubits. They are royal cubits, and that is 3.6 metres high. And the first thing that he measured was a wall around the outside of the house. Now, if you notice from the picture up there, that this wall is called is a wall. It's also the threshold mentioned in the next verse, in verse 6. And it was 6 cubits high and 6 cubits broad. So that man is measuring it. Now, it's called the foundation wall, but you notice that he's actually standing on something else. See, back in those days, architecture was a little bit differently, and until now, especially in Adelaide, we've got such bad soil, we've got to dig down about 3 to 5 metres before we get a solid foundation. This solid wall is what everything is going to be built on. And so it's this wall here. And a gate every now and then is cut out into the middle of it. It is that high. Okay? I think the footings of my house sit about 600 millimetres above the ground. Okay? They might go a bit deeper, but that's a pretty big footing, isn't it? So everybody can picture that, okay? You can see, okay, good. Right, I'll just put this down for a second. What else do we know about this wall? Come with me to chapter 42. And this is really important. So if you want to put a marking back in chapter 40 in a minute, I want you to mark in these verses which we're about to read. What is this wall all about? And this is the most important thing to get right before we understand anything else. In verse 16 of chapter 42, he measures the east side. So after he's done all this measuring, he goes back to the outer court and he measures the east side, verse 16, the north side, verse 17, the south side, verse 18, and the west side, verse 19. How long was each side? What does it say? 500 reeds. How many cubits would that be if there's 6 cubits to a reed? 3 times 6? No, it's not 3 times 6, is it? I said 3 because it's actually 3,000. Yeah. 3,000, is that right? 500 times 6 is 3,000. Okay, so 3,000 cubits. What's that in length? About 1.6 kilometres. Okay, so how do we know this is the same wall? Come with me to verse 20. He measured it by the four sides. It had a wall round about 500 reeds long, 500 reeds broad, to make a separation between the sanctuary and the profane place. That wall of verse 20 is the same wall of chapter 40 and verse 5. So when he measured this foundation wall, which I held up the reed before, was so high, they kept on going 1.6 kilometres that way, 1.6 kilometres that way, 1.6 kilometres the other way, and 1.6 kilometres the other way. It's the same wall. Everything else now fits in between that. Okay, let's just dig a bit deeper here. What's that a map of? Adelaide, okay? It's an older map here because that was back in the day when they had this weird Grand Prix race back in the late 80s, I think it was. But you can actually see Adelaide there. You've got North Terrace, you've got West Terrace, South Terrace, and Pulteney Street. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit in perfectly because the other terrace is over there. It doesn't work. But Ezekiel's temple fits into that size. And you can actually stand on one terrace and you can look right down King William Street or Pulteney Street. You cannot see the other terrace. 1.6 kilometres is a long way. You cannot see it. Okay, you can see a building right down there. You can see it, but you actually cannot see it. So that just gives you some appreciation of how large this temple is. Let's just dig a bit deeper. Solomon's temple, 1 Kings chapter 5. Does anybody know how many men it took to build Solomon's temple? It's in the thousands. Hear a few groanings. 183,000 men were used to build it. Does anybody know how long it took to build it? There's here a few years there. 7 years to build it. Okay, how big was it? 30 metres long by 10 metres wide by 15 metres high. Okay, so a bit bigger than this hall. Let's put this into perspective again. So all that effort went into something that was exceedingly magnifical, and that's the description of it. Look at this. So there's Adelaide. There's the temple. Have a look in one of the corners. That's how big Solomon's temple is compared to Ezekiel's temple. 183,000 people were used to build it. 7 years. How much effort is going to go into building Ezekiel's temple over that probably only a 40-year period? As Jesus Christ is the builder. You imagine the infrastructure. You imagine the working out, all these people going in different directions, all these goods coming from all other lands. Well, the Catholic system is being judged. Armageddon has just happened. The devastation throughout the world from the earthquake. It's incredible. Solomon's temple was only just minuscule. And it was exceedingly magnificent. Got it right that time. What's this one going to be like? Now, we were actually going to spend the rest of our night looking at this gate and proving this gate and walking through this gate. And we were going to walk up and down the hall here and actually measure it out for you. We've run out of time for that, but that's fine because I've got a few slides that's actually going to make it easier for you tonight. Because Yahweh loves the gates of Zion. And this front gate is a perfect entrance of one of 9 gates on each side of the temple to walk into. What's so important about gates? Now, gates are the place of public hearings, legal transactions and business. We know the story of Ruth and what happened in the gate there. Gates in larger cities were often named by their activity, sheep gate or fish gate. Special rooms and seats could be found at gates for conducting business. The gates was a very important place. The first impressions of a city are found in a gate. And you think of Ezekiel had seen this gate. The lesson is not lost on Ezekiel, as the first thing that he is taken to is a gate of this temple that will be built in the future age. And he is there on the self-same day looking at this gate. Huge compared to this gate of the Ishtar Gate. And the point is not lost on him. Just turn with me to Psalm 87 for a moment. God has made this gate huge, brothers and sisters and young people, and the point is not lost on Ezekiel. And perhaps he reflects on these few verses in Psalm 87 and verse 1 and 2, where it says, his foundation is in the holy mountains. Holy mountains? Yahweh loveth the gates of Zion. Notice gates, plural, more than all the dwellings of Jacob. It doesn't matter where Israel has been, wherever the temporal places of Jacob, all the travellings of Israel has been throughout the past. Yahweh loves the gates of Zion more than all those things. Glorious things are spoken of thee, a city of God. Of course, it mentions Babylon. It mentions all these different places in verse 4. And then it says in verse 5, and of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born in her, and the highest himself shall establish her. Yahweh shall count when he writeth up the people, that this man was born there. So as people walk into this temple, brothers and sisters, into this gate, an angel or a doorkeeper is going to say to that person, well, where are you from? I'm from Australia. No, you weren't. You were born here. Where are you from? I'm from America. No, you're not. You were born here. And it's going to be written down. You're born in this place. You live in this place. And for us, brothers and sisters, we are spiritual Jews. We live in that place. We live in the heavenlies in Christ Jesus. We're not citizens of Australia. We're citizens of Zion. And we live that today. The things that we do in life, we live it today. Now, let's turn with me to another psalm, Psalm 84. And verse 10. Absolutely magnificent psalm. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. This should be our thoughts, brothers and sisters. The word doorkeeper doesn't necessarily mean a doorman, shake hands or whatever. But it means someone who stands in the gate, just like this angel stood in the gate. And he said, I'd rather just stand in the gate than be out there in the tents of wickedness. But what we're being taught from these verses, brothers and sisters, and from this gate, is just how God loves people entering into what he has made, and he loves to show us how magnificent those things are. And he wants to share it with us. Now, doorkeepers, ecclesially, have such an important role, brothers. I reckon it's one of the most underestimated and yet one of the most important jobs in ecclesial life. A doorkeeper sets the tone for the meeting. If a doorkeeper's just slouching, chewing the gum, yeah, g'day mate, how you going? It just doesn't create the right atmosphere. But a doorkeeper loves the truth and is appropriate, creates the atmosphere. A doorkeeper sees everyone who comes in. He sees those who may not be there. And he gets to find out who might be sick and not sick. A doorman has such a responsible job and they can follow up on those things. And so the first thing Ezekiel's taken to is the gate. And he was welcomed in at that place. What we're going to do is just, in fact, this slide's good. So you can imagine us, brothers and sisters, walking into these gates, crossing the waters, maybe the waters of the ankles or the loins or the knee, whatever it might be, and walking into these gates. Our first impressions of this place, we walk the first time into this place, and magnificent it will be. Now just turn with me back to Ezekiel chapter 40, and I want to prove something to you technically. Right. You're going to have to believe me with a lot of these things, because I've run out of time actually. But this is a side view of this gate which Ezekiel's walked into. Okay. He's walked up these stairs, he saw the man in the gate, and what he did in the next preceding verses, verse 6, he saw this threshold. A bit later on, he saw the back threshold. In between, he saw little chambers, and he saw some other posts in the middle. Those little chambers, it suggested they're possibly lifts which take you to the other levels. There's conjecture about that as well, but it seems plausible that could be the case. What I'm going to give you is some measurements, because I just love this. Being in the engineering game, I love this. But we're actually told in verse 7 and 10 that these little chambers, these little areas where the lifts could be, are 6 plus 6 plus 6 cubits. That adds up to 18. Everybody agrees with that? I got my maths right? Good. Okay. We're also told in verse 7 and 10 that there are pillars, 6 cubits on either side. The ones in the middle are 5 and 5. That adds up to 22. Did I get my maths right on that one? Everyone's happy? A bit later on in the chapter, he measured the porch in verse 9. And you can actually see that in verse 9. He measured the porch of the gate, 8 cubits, and the post thereof, 2 cubits. So what's 8 plus 2? 10. What does that all add up to when you add them along? Have a look at verse 15. And from the face of the gate of the entrance unto the face of the porch of the inner gate were 50 cubits. And so everything that I just raced through and showed you, these were the measurements and they are the verses where it was. It just gives you the overall. You might think, okay, what's 50 cubits in real terms? I'm going to quickly go through this one. In real terms, what's that a picture of? One Tree Hill Hall. Okay, that is One Tree Hill. If we were to put that gate there, this one opening, how big do you think One Tree Hill Hall is compared to that gate? It'd be about that high. That gives you some idea. How big is Cumberland Hall? A bit smaller. That just gives you some appreciation, the first impressions. Now, the doorkeeper in this place, the presentation of this place, the magnificence of this place. God has made the gate special. What's this a picture of again? Well, we all know that. That would be how long the gate is in comparison to this. So if you were to walk out to the road out here, walk all the way to the road over that side, turn around and go that way for about 30 metres. That's how big this gate is. That's one gate out of 9 on each side that gets you into this place. That's just sensational, brothers and sisters, and hopefully it gives you some sort of vision as you walk about Zion in your visions and in your dreams and in your aspirations, thinking about the kingdom age. Many other things we're going to say, but we're going to just move along and show you one last slide. Brother Sulley stated that, if all the chapels and all the churches in the world were combined into one, less the wasted areas, I'm not sure what they were that he's talking about, a very large building would be the result. A vast structure of that kind will be required for the centre of universal worship. And that's why it is the size it is. And brothers and sisters, as we desire to enter into this temple with clean hands and with a pure heart, may we be able to say, as the psalmist said, though a host should encamp around me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise up against me, in this one thing will I be confident. One thing have I desired of Yahweh, and that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of Yahweh all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of Yahweh and to inquire in his temple.